This is The Kicker from Carolina Public Press. I'm Peter Kent, the host and producer. Carolina Public Press is an independent, nonprofit news organization dedicated to in-depth and investigative reporting for North Carolina. Today on The Kicker, there are 4 national forests in North Carolina. If you love the outdoors, you've probably spent time in at least one of them. How they are managed is a big deal, covering everything from where you can ride a mountain bike to clearing down trees across the trails you hike. Right now, the U.S. Forest Service is revising the management plan for 2 forests in western North Carolina, the Pisgah and Nantahala. The plan will cover 1.1 million acres, more public land than there are people in the western part of the state. The plan affects more than hikers and bikers. It touches the lives and livelihoods of the people who live in counties surrounded by the public lands. The plan impacts their economy and culture. The new plan will set the course for the forests for the next 20 years. Clearly, there's a lot at stake. The Forest Service is required to get public input, and a number of groups are participating in the process. Imagine all the ways the forest is used, from recreation to timbering, and you have an idea of the number of voices being heard. Carolina Public Press's lead environmental reporter, Jack Eigelman, has been reporting on the issues for more than 4 years. And today, on The Kicker, he'll talk with Michelle Aldridge of the U.S. Forest Service. She's the planning staff officer for the Nantahala and Pisgah National Forest Plan revision, and with Kevin Coburn, National Stewardship Director for American Whitewater. Michelle, Kevin, welcome. Jack, our reporter, you've got the mic, and I'll let you do most of the questioning.
Hey, thanks, Peter, for the introduction. And Michelle, Kevin, it's great to have you guys. Michelle, why don't you start us off? Will you tell us a little bit about the 2 forests? Give us a snapshot of the Pisgah and Nantahala National Forests.
Sure. So Peter gave us a great introduction that the Nantahala and Pisgah cover just under 1.1 million acres in western North Carolina, and they're some of the most visited national forests in the country. They're part of the cultural fabric here in western North Carolina. It's a source of beautiful scenery, spiritual renewal, and connection for many livelihoods, all grounded in the incredible diversity that the forests provide. So there's a couple really unique attributes of the forest. One is just the amount of recreation that's drawn here. Again, 2 of the most visited national forests in the country. People come for beautiful drives, hikes, fishing, rafting, climbing, all sorts of different types of activities, paddling, horseback riding. Also, there is really unique biological diversity. It is some of the most diverse high elevation ecosystems in the country, so spruce fir and southern Appalachian balds, and communities that provide for rare and unique plants, things like Gray's lily or spruce fir moss spider, even the Carolina northern flying squirrel, and streams that support important aquatic diversity like southern brook trout and hellbender salamanders. And besides just the species that depend on the water, a lot of the people in western North Carolina depend on this water too. Drinking water that supplies municipal supplies to more than 4 states comes from these mountains, and also there are a lot of people whose jobs depend on the area. People who produce timber products or who collect galax or other products from the forest and medicinal material. Also, it's people who are outfitter and guide recreation businesses depend on the forest as well.
Kevin, first of all, would you tell us a little bit about what you do, and what's your take on the forest? What do you get from the Pisgah and Nantahala National Forest?
Yeah, sure. Well, I work for a nonprofit, and we represent whitewater kayakers, canoeists, and rafters, and their conservation and access issues. So, the Nantahala Pisgah is one of the most important whitewater destinations, certainly in the country and maybe the world as well. And it has just this wealth of aquatic biodiversity and scenery and rivers that are economic engines for the region, but also just a big reason why people move here and why they love it so much.
Yeah.
We want to see that protected.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite spot, favorite river?
Oh, lately it's been the Nolichucky.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Michelle, beginning in November 2012, the plan revision for the two forests commenced. And can you give us a little overview of what the revision plan is, who it impacts, what it looks like, how long it takes?
Sure. So I think the most important thing to understand about this revision is that it essentially develops a master plan for these two national forests. So when you think about a master plan for your community, it's really strategic direction. It's guidance that helps explain the vision of where you want your community to head. And then activities that you see in your community on a day-to-day have to be consistent with that master plan vision. And so the same thing is true for the forest plan. It lays out a strategic vision that future projects will have to be consistent with. So the planning process begins with first understanding the current condition of the forest and all the resources that are there. And so the Forest Service took some time to develop an assessment of current condition and trends. And then the next step is to develop the plan itself. What are the long-term goals and vision for the forest? What are the specific things we're going to do in the next 10 years to move toward those long-term goals? And how are we going to identify where those activities take place on the landscape? In addition to developing a plan, we have to develop alternatives to that plan and analyze the effects of those alternatives and say, well, if we do this plan, how will that affect water? How will that affect habitat? How will that affect trees? And so we also have to do that analysis of effects. So that's the stage we're in now, is developing the analysis of effects.
And Kevin, obviously you're advocating for whitewater paddlers, but you've been involved since the start of
Yeah,
the
pretty much.
plan. And tell us a little bit about what your role has been, and if you can expand also on the collaborative process, which is really unique element of national forest planning.
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the great things about national forests is that they belong to everybody. They're public land, and all of the public has a say in how they're managed. And it's a very democratic process. And I think one of the cool things about it is that good ideas resonate no matter who they come from. So it doesn't matter if you're an expert in any resource. If you have a good idea about how to solve a problem or how to manage the forest well, it can be carried up through the chain through people like Michelle to decision makers. And there's been opportunities throughout the planning process for the public to get involved. There's been a ton of public meetings. There's been public comment opportunities, and that's going to continue. So anybody can get involved. But there's also been a group of us that have been getting together monthly for years, literally, several groups really that are getting together to collaborate and try to solve these complex challenges and conflicts and potential opportunities about how Western North Carolinians would like to see the land managed and what areas are really important to stay the same and what areas would people really like to see improved or changed in some way under the plan. So we've been meeting, there's two groups really that are kind of looking broadly across the forest, the Forum, the Nantahala Forum, and then the Nantahala Pisgah Partnership. And both groups there's a lot of overlap and we have a lot of feedback from one another. But the goal is to reach kind of consensus and just kind of raise the best ideas we have as community members and as representatives of community members and raise those to the Forest Service to consider.
Yeah, what sort of interests have been represented at those meetings? What's maybe a little snapshot of who's been involved?
No, it's great. There's been a lot of interest from the hunters and the wildlife community, people that just like wildlife and like to go hunting. Anglers are involved. There's all kinds of recreationists from backcountry, horseback riders. Obviously me for paddling, but also economic development from rural counties and timber products folks. It's really diverse. It's basically everybody that has an overarching interest of the forest.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
And I would just add, we have a couple additional collaborators, and it's not just those groups, but also other members of the public. So we've had 42 face-to-face meetings since this process began across the forest. We also have been meeting with tribes to get their interest and to make sure that cultural and tribal resources are represented. Also youth, we've been doing outreach specifically to kids. And we spent a lot of time trying to engage local governments. The people who are here in Western North Carolina use these forests and know them best. And we have 18 counties. We've reached out directly to all of them, and we've had meetings with 15 counties and 3 councils of government.
You know, we've talked about groups and things like that. Michelle, as you've talked and gone to these meetings, what have you heard? What are some of the people? I imagine this gets to be very, very passionate in some cases. Have you heard some of these statements where people have really spoken from their heart?
Absolutely. People are very passionate, and I think that speaks to the importance of the forest in their life. We hear from individuals about all different types of resources, whether it's the places that are near and dear and they want to make sure are available for them to experience with their children, or if it's if it might be a particular topic that they want to provide input on, for example, wildlife habitat or recreation. We get comments from a wide range of folks.
Have you heard anyone who said, my grandparents grew up on this land and this really means a lot. This is my heart. And you people are deciding in a way that I feel like you're letting everybody else but us talk. Have you heard some of that?
We have heard many people express deep passion and legacy that they want to see this continue for their future. And so that's what we're trying to reflect. We've added a chapter of the plan that basically shares what goals are for each section of the forest, where we can say how people can connect with the land in those places, to try and show that we're listening to those kinds of comments and to identify what goals are for how we'll work in those areas.
Kevin, one of the things that fascinates me is when I think of whitewater paddlers, I think of, well, guys that look like you, wiry, rugged, handsome guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, but I think of them as primarily progressive types. I think of them primarily as people who we would say probably lean left more than right. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, not so. I mean, the thing about Western North Carolina with the recreation community is that we're all different walks of life, you know, all different political leanings and people that live in rural communities. And, you know, when you ask people, why do you live in Asheville? You know, they don't say because of high wages and cheap cost of living. You know, they say because of the mountains, because of the opportunities to get outside and the access. And that cuts across political lines. It cuts across all kinds of divides that we might otherwise see. You know, we have this shared connection to the mountains, and whether it's through paddling or through hunting or any other type of interaction with nature, even just driving along the parkway and looking out at the beautiful mountains, which is largely the national forest.
Michelle, one thing that we haven't talked about is national forests are different than national parks. Many people know that, some people don't. But if you can explain a little bit about the multi-use mandate that the national forest has, which makes it really different than the national parks that we also have in our region.
Yes, so when Congress set aside lands for national forests, it was with the intent of having a sustainable supply of wood for future generations, and also for making sure that water supplies were going to be provided into the future. And then over time, additional multiple uses were identified: recreation, wilderness, wildlife, and all of these have, there is not one priority among all of these. The forest will make sure that all of these can happen on the national forest. And so I think that's what's really awesome about the national forest, is that we can provide these things in the same place and meet the needs of so many people and the future generations.
And so one element of forest planning is that land designations are recommended in the forest plan. One of them is wild and scenic river designation. Kevin, would you talk a little bit about that and what you're advocating for and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. Well, any designation takes an act of Congress, but the Forest Service can manage some areas like wild and scenic river corridors and potential wilderness areas for those values, and giving Congress time to act. So there's definitely, you know, a suite of rivers and a suite of areas that people care about deeply that they'd like to see protected in the future that way, and given interim protection in the plan. And what's interesting to me about the multi-use mandate is we looked at, in our collaborative group, we assumed that we had conflict all over the map between interests that wanted more active management of the forest and interests that wanted less. So kind of wilderness on one end, active logging on the other, but lots of gray area in the middle too. And what we found is that there was about, I think it was 17% of the forest where we were kind of had differing views, but that means there's 83% where we kind of agreed that these areas could move towards more of a conservation, a traditional conservation or less active management. And then the other parts of the forest could be, used for restoration and timber harvest and other activities. So it was really cool to see that where we thought we had this huge values conflict across the forest, it actually was really specific to certain places. And those were, gave us a way to talk about those places too that were hard.
Yeah, you mentioned wilderness. Why is wilderness so controversial? Why is it a hard topic to discuss in Western North Carolina?
I think wilderness is a topic that stirs passion on all sides, and we recognize that. It's something that we're going to build our, when I said we have to have different alternatives, we will vary how we approach wilderness in our alternatives, and that's because some people want to make sure that there are areas of the land that are untrammeled by man, and other people believe in having more access and being able to keep different tools open on different areas of the land. So it's some of it is one of our multiple uses, and it's a requirement that we evaluate in this planning process. So we have a lot of passion on this issue.
Kevin, do you have anything to add to the whole idea about what wilderness offers or what it puts limits on?
The only thing I'd add to what Michelle said is that it's permanent, and it's envisioned to be a permanent designation. And for some people, that brings them great solace in knowing that that place will remain wild, for perpetuity is something that makes them feel a great sense of comfort and joy. And for other people, it means that they're limited in their ability to do what they want maybe in the future. So I feel like the word permanence comes up a lot.
One of the things that I've heard, and in my reading, getting ready for today's show, is mountain bikers seem to have a real issue with wilderness area. They had said that bikes can be considered a mechanical advantage and might find themselves restricted from wilderness areas. Is this true?
Yeah, so in areas that are designated wilderness, mountain biking is not an activity that takes place in those because it is mechanical.
And I just say too that IMBA and SORBA, which are the national and local mountain biking groups, are very involved in the collaborative process. And they've been great to work with, in my opinion, and they are certainly supportive of protective designations like wilderness in some places. And they also, actively advocate for additional trail resources in other areas. So there's a lot of that, a lot of ability to support other interests as long as somewhere on the forest your needs are being met.
And just to go back to wilderness for a second, again, a little bit of reading is a dangerous thing for someone like me. For hunters, would they be allowed to put up temporary deer stands in wilderness areas?
I think temporary is the key word there. I mean, it's going to depend. The intent in wilderness is that it's untrammeled and there are no permanent structures. Hunting is allowed in wilderness.
As I suggest, I figure angling is too, fishing.
Yes, yes.
Okay. It's funny, what happens is that while these conversations go on a lot, people get their own ideas of what's going to happen in a wilderness or in the forest plan. I imagine the public meetings help. Do you both get out and talk with constituents and people to help educate them?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Forest Service has hosted, how many meetings have you hosted?
42.
40, no, not that she's counting, but yeah, I've been at some of those both in a formal capacity on panels and also an informal capacity, and I think it's been outstanding. We've been able to bring in people from our collaborative group to the meetings and help kind of serve as validators for the Forest Service and maybe speak to people in their own language a little bit more. And it's been really positive.
I guess it's important to point out too that it's not just recreational users that are using the forest. There is an economic interest as well, whether it's tourism and recreation or whether it's timber harvesting or harvesting galax and other things like that. Can you speak a little bit to the economic impact of the forest?
Yeah, and we've had people who make their livelihood from the forest have been active in meetings, whether it is the galax collector or the folks who work in the timber industry. So we did an analysis early on as part of our plan revision process and identified that it was about 1,900 jobs that came from the presence of the forest and just over $60 million added to the economy, not including the recreational economy. And as we get into our analysis further now, we'll get some more updated numbers because those are from earlier. But it is, I think, bigger than that. So it's a big part of the livelihood, especially in some of our counties where there is a huge portion of the land base that is national forest. And we're really looking to those communities and those county engagements to get that perspective of how it affects folks locally. We've had some really great input. Just for example, Graham County provided us with really important comments from the community members there, and we were able to take those comments and fold them in directly. So that was really valuable.
Yeah, and I'd just say for outdoor recreation alone, the Outdoor Industry Association, they estimated that it's $4.8 billion of consumer spending in Western North Carolina, so per year. So
That's huge.
It's huge, but I think it's just a much bigger story than that of people that live in these communities because of the mountains, and that it doesn't just stop with recreation. It's why a lot of people are here.
While we're talking about money, let's talk about money. How does something like this get funded? Taking on this complicated multi-use plan can't be inexpensive, and it must be tough for the Forest Service to spread itself across all these interests. Okay, Michelle, what's your trick?
Yeah. Well, I think I have a team. I don't do this alone. So I work with a team of about 15 specialists, everything from a hydrologist, soil scientist, geologist, several other ologists, recreation specialists, and those social scientists, lots of folks on the team. And they bring their expertise. It's part of our work at the forest, so we continue to be managers of the resource, but it's funded through the Forest Service process.
And how does it get funded so that the parking lots get taken care of and the trees get cleared on the trails and everything gets done? It seems like in these days and in this government climate that there's less money to go around. Do you reach out to other groups to try to help you?
We definitely appreciate that when others are able to share in our work together. So it's one of the things we're trying to build on in this plan is to not just identify what we think we can do with our existing budgets and capacity, but to build in goals for what we could do if we had help from others.
Do you also have any chance to have input from the North Carolina congressional delegation? Are they kept up to date on what's going on with the Forest Revision Plan?
Yes, we involve our congressional offices as well as as I said already, the local government officials.
Do you hear from them about this?
Yes, they provide comments and just as others do.
Kevin, you have been involved with forest plans around the country, and forest planning is super complex. So if you're not involved at the table, it's hard to get a sense of what's going on. But I wonder if you can explain how will this forest plan impact regular people of North Carolina who just like to go for a hike or camp or fish in a stream? What does it mean to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michelle will probably kick me for saying this, but probably not very much. You know, the forests are great. They're going to stay great. They're going to see, hopefully, subtle shifts where if you are a hunter, you might see a little bit more open habitat that's good for game. And if you're the kind of person that maybe wants to be in a deep, dark forest, hopefully those forests will keep growing and the places you really care about won't be the places that are open for open habitat. So what I think we're going to see is a little bit more work being done in the forest through both volunteer contributions from partners and also just the Forest Service really focusing on really good projects that are broadly supported. So I think you'll see hopefully less conflict, more getting done, and probably just a little bit better visitor services. I mean, it all costs money, but I think what you'll see is that the Forest Service will do a better job of focusing that money on the types of projects people care about, where they care about it.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that's good. We're all of the values and the reasons people visit the National Forest are still going to be there. I believe that the revised plan will help make us more effective and faster at doing some of our work because it's going to establish a clear vision for each ecological community. It's going to identify goals that we can do more streamlined with the help of others, and it also outlines goals and priorities for each area of the forest for communities to be involved in. I think those three things are really helpful to make sure that this plan's more effective.
One more thing too, Michelle and her team split the forest up in their analysis in the geographic areas, which are, I think there's 11 of them, and they're really cool. If you look at them on a map, they'll make sense to you of like, oh yeah, that's a special place. And they're going to do work in those areas and kind of spread the benefits of the plan across the forest. And no matter where you live, you'll receive those benefits.
That brings up a good point. Where can people access information about the forest? I know that Carolina Public Press has a lot of the documents, don't they, Jack, on their site?
Some, yes.
And where can other people find information?
I would say the best place is to just Google Nantahala-Pisgah Forest Plan Revision and make sure you're clicking on a fs.usda.gov link. It should be the top hit. And on that website, you'll find a lot of our early pieces of the plan that we shared along the way. Right now, we're working on that analysis, and in early 2019, it will be available for a 90-day comment period, and folks will have a lot more information then. We're not accepting comments at this time, but at that time, that would be a good opportunity for folks to get engaged, as well as once the plan is finalized during the implementation.
Yeah, and if you're interested in at least one of the collaborative groups that I'm part of, go to npforestpartnership.org, and you can learn more about kind of the public side of how we're engaging. And I just encourage people that while this has been going on for a few years, it's a great time to get involved in the spring when the DEIS, that's the environmental analysis, is out. It's not too late, and it's easy.
I would just add, if folks could thank folks for their patience. I know it's been a while since they've been started in this process, and we appreciate that input. We're getting close to a strong product, and we're really looking forward to sharing it with everyone.
Michelle, I'm going to throw you a curve. Are you from around here?
I am a military brat. I've been in a lot of places helping to serve the country.
What's your impression of North Carolina?
Oh, it's an amazing place. It's a place I would love to call home.
Kevin, are you from here?
I actually came here for undergrad in 1994.
And stayed?
Yeah, more or less. I've bounced around a little bit, but I keep coming back. Yeah, I love it.
Jack, any final words?
No, thank you all. I know how tough a process it's been. It's taken a lot of commitment, and thank you guys for the work you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
Kevin, Michelle, thanks for coming in. Carolina Public Press is going to stay covering this, and I know Jack will stay involved so that you can expect more reports from the press on this. It's something that I think as life gets more and more complicated, it becomes more and more absolutely essential that we have areas like this. I just came in contact with a term called forest bathing, and it sounds hideous, but it's supposed to really help make you feel better. So I'm hoping to go forest bathe in the Pisgah National and Nantahala National Forests. Thanks again for coming in.
Thanks.